Hi, welcome to another video. Well, I got quite a few emails and messages recently about the mcX360 Lua plugin that I uploaded quite some time ago now, but I hadn't actually put anything in there, any instructions, manual, anything like that. And I've got a lot of, like I say, emails and things of where is the config panel? Well, unfortunately there isn't one. The Lua version is for you to write, and this video is all going to be about some hints and tips of how to use it. So first off, you'll need to put the M4PW and the .sig file into your Mac4 Hobby plugins directory. Once you have that and you start up Mac 4, you'll need to go into the Mac plugins tab and just make sure that the mcX360 plugin is active. Once you've got that, we now need to set up what it's going to do. But before I do that, if you open up your reg file from the diagnostics menu and open up mcX360 Lua. Now these are all registry values, and if you press something on your Xbox controller, you'll find these values are changing with it. Buttons are represented by a 0 which is off and a 1 that is on. Any of the triggers, like the left trigger for instance, they'll have a value of 0 to 255, and any thumbsticks, they do 0 to 99, or obviously 0 to -99. So these are the registry values that we're going to be using within our Lua script. So the first thing we need to do is find somewhere to put our Lua script. So if we go into our operator and edit screen, underneath our profile on the default part of it, we're going to add a Lua panel. Now, very important bit here, you must make sure your panel is hidden. If you don't make sure your panel is hidden, if I come out now, if you try to move or go into any of these tabs here, you won't get into them because your Lua panel, although you can't see it, is sitting on top of them tabs. So back in the screen editor, with your panel, make sure it's hidden. Make sure that's got a tick in the box. I'm going to give this a new name of X360. Go to our Events tab, highlight script, and then we'll open up our script editor. One of the first things we need to do is, or you'll need to do, is I've actually included a little template to help you get started. As what this template does, it's declaring our local instance, and then this is a timer panel. Now the plugin, you can use as many timer panels as you like. Is all we do is we create a dummy panel which we never show, and then we connect a WX timer event to this panel and then start the timer. Now those 3 lines there, they create, in fact those 3 lines plus the actual event itself here, that's exactly the same as a PLC. That's physically how that's working. It's going in a loop. It starts at the beginning, gets to the end, and it just keeps going in a loop. Now the first one we've got here is 360 timer event, and this is, I'm going to set this up on my left trigger. Is what this is going to do for me is if I'm not using the Xbox controller, then nothing on that controller will do anything unless I press that trigger. It's like a fail safe. If you've got it laying on the side, you're doing something on your machine and you accidentally knock the Xbox controller and hit one of the thumbsticks, it's not going to do anything unless you're holding that trigger down. So pretty simple how this works. We've got a function called getXin, which is get the Xbox controller input. Basically that's all it is. It's looking at the registry value and getting the value from that registry. In the event timer itself, like we said, if getXin left trigger value is greater than 150 and X enabled equals 0, then, well, there's nothing in there at the moment, so it's just going to put something in our taskbar to say that the X360 is running. But if that value is less than 50, then it will put in there the X360 is stopped. Now we're going to use a variable called X enabled equals 0. By putting another variable for it to check, if I was to press the left trigger, well, it would be constantly over 150, obviously. In fact, yeah, that's right, it would be over 150. So it would bombard Mac4 with that MC control set last error of 360 running. It would, every time it went through that loop, it would set that last error. By putting another variable in, like X enabled, it won't run it again because it's looking for that X enabled to be 0 the next time it comes round, but it won't, it will be 1. So it'll only do that once until you release the trigger, and then the next part of it will set the next X enabled to 0, which enables the first part of the function to run. I hope you understood that, because I think I'm losing myself now. Well, let's have a quick look at what this will do. If we come out of our panel now and exit to the main GUI, as you can see in the history bar at the bottom, taskbar, whatever you'd like to call it, you'll see there it says mcX360 controller found and active. Well, that's good. That's what we want to see. If your controller goes to sleep, it will tell you your controller's gone to sleep, and on activation it will tell you it's reactivated. Now if I press the left trigger, then nothing happens. What have I done wrong then? Okay, I had a quick look in the script that we've done, and I'd made a tiny little spelling mistake. I'd spelt panel P-N-E-L. So it won't work. Anyway, with your Xbox controller, left trigger, you'll find now if you press the trigger, it will say your X360 is running, release it, and it will say it's stopped. So, like I say, is what this is going to do is stop anything working on the Xbox controller unless you press that trigger button. Back in our panel, let's go back to it. Events tab, script, open that up. So as you can see, we've got two parts of this X360 timer. We've got obviously the value when it's off and the value when it's on. So the first thing I'm going to put onto this is an e-stop, which bet you can't guess which button it's going to go on. Yep, that nice red one. Shame that weren't an E button instead of a B button on it. So the way we do this is we're going to create another timer events. I don't want to use one timer and fill everything in the part that we're using with, so like 200 different if statements. So we can set it running with a couple of other timers. So to create the e-stop timer, the first thing we're going to need is another dummy panel to connect our timer event to. And we're going to stick that underneath the init panel, and it's going to look like this. E-stop panel equals WX panel, and the e-stop timer, which is WX timer, will connect that to the e-stop panel. Now we don't want this e-stop working when we're not using the controller. So the way we start off, as you can see here, the 360 timer start. Now we can do exactly the same. So we can start our timer when the trigger is pressed, and that is an e-stop timer, so we can use e-stop timer. We can start this off running. I'm going to do this a little bit faster. 100 milliseconds is normally pretty straightforward for a plugin of this type. Well, let's go a bit faster because it is the e-stop. So we're going to put our e-stop commands in a timer event. So when we press this button, let's start the timer. And equally, when we're not using the controller, let's stop this e-stop timer from running. Less resources, if you like. Have I forgotten what I'm doing? Stop. Simple as that. So our e-stop timer is only going to work when we press that button, like we say. So we need an e-stop timer now, and my e-stop timer looks like this. This is our piece of code. This is our timer event for the e-stop, which is what I'm using. And as you can see, it's using the same principle like the X enabled equals false and X enabled equals true, because we don't want to press that button and it constantly keeps sending an emergency signal to Mach4 to stop. Because, I mean, you can get too much signals going into Mach4 and totally lock it up if you bombard the API. So we're going to use that same principle here. In fact, I nearly forgot, you're going to need that once you've got your timer. You'll need to define these at the beginning. So we'll stick the stop is equal to false at the top here. Now back in here, what is it doing? If get X in, which is looking at our function, and the registry we're looking for is button B. And if that's equal to 1, and our E state that it's first run, so it's going to be 0, then it's going to run this part. We'll set another variable within there, local E stop, and we'll get the state of the signal. Now, if the state of that signal is 1, we're going to turn it to 0. But if the state of it is obviously 0, then it's not going to run that first part. It will set it to 1, so it will turn it on. Again, we use our ESS state. ESS state? It's not a smooth stepper. ES state. And we'll set that to true. So then, by setting that to true, the next function will work when we release the button to set that to false. Now, I've done it this way, so if I'd have done it like a normal button, like we will do on the buttons later on, if I'd have pressed button B, it would have activated the E-stop, and then doing it as a normal way, if I'd have released it, it would have cleared the E-stop. Well, I didn't want that on mine. I wanted mine to be 2 presses. So on the first press of the B button, it activates the E-stop. I've then got to activate that button again, press the button again to deactivate the E-stop. So that's the E-stop all set up. We'll have a quick look to see if that works. Yes, we want to save, otherwise we typed it for nothing. Whoop, we got an error. Well, yes, I know you've just told us we've got an error. I wonder if I'll ever come out of this screen without seeing that. What have we got? Local state of false, yes. X enable, E-stop timer start. E-stop timer stop. I'll spell that right, haven't I? Yep, blah blah blah. Oh, what a silly mistake to make. Cutting and pasting. E-state is equal rather than equal. Right, let's try again. Yay! Right, there then, if I press my trigger, now you can see it's running. Press the B button and we're in an E-stop condition. Press the button again and it clears our E-stop. There you go, that's your first button connected. Not many more to go now. So let's go back into our screen editor. Now before I go any further, I'll give you a quick demonstration on what happens if you don't use these extra parts of your if statements. So I'm going to take these out. Just leave it so if the value is over 150, and then if it's obviously lower than 150, let's see what happens to our script now. That's on the enabling of it. So if we go into our history, you'll see we've got quite a lot there already. So we'll clear that. Go back into it. You can see it's constantly, whatever we put, now my controller's turned off. Let's just turn that back on. Running, stopped, running, stopped. If we go into our history, you can see that's where my controller's reactivated. You can see how many times it's constantly printing that out. We close off, go back into our script. Let's get rid of them again. Put our script back how it should be. Close and save everything. Let's go into our history, delete everything it's just done. It's just done all those whilst we was editing the screen. Well, just before we was editing the screen actually. So our history now obviously is clear. So turn on, turn off, turn on, turn off. So if we look in our history now, it's not blocking, like I said before, it's not blocking up the core, it's only doing what we've asked it to do, and that's all from using that tiny extra little bit on the end of our if statements. Now I'm telling you that now because we're going to do the D-pad next, which is what I use for an incremental jog. I use the D-pad for incremental and I use the thumbstick for velocity moves. So if we was to do the D-pad and put our increments, and if it was over 150, then do an incremental move, that's going to constantly keep adding an incremental move to it. So it's going to end up being like a velocity move. So that extra little bit on the end will stop us from doing that. So, D-pad, what's the first thing we're going to need? Well, it's going to be, yep, another dummy panel. So underneath the e-stop, let's stick in our dummy panel for our D-pad. And the same with the e-stop, we'll need to go into here and put in our D-pad timer, and we're going to start this one off, but not with one of them. With one of them will do. We're going to start it and run at 100. Obviously when we let go of the trigger, we don't need that D-pad running anymore, so we'll turn it off. Simple as that. Now all we need to do is add our D-pad actual timer event, which will start off looking like this. This is just for the Y plus button. That's it. So this is our D-panel timer event. Now I added something extra here. Now if we look at the if statement on this one, we've got if get x in D-pad up is equal to 1, and we've also got a get x in button left shoulder is equal to 0, and then of course our YP state is equal to false, which is our switch at the end. Now why have I put that button left shoulder in? Well, I could do it as in with the D-pad just being up and down, or Y plus, Y minus, X minus and X plus, but I've also got my Z on the same D-pad. By pressing the left shoulder button, it then allows me to use the Y plus and the Y minus as my Z plus and Z minus. I use it like a shift button to make other buttons do other things. So you've got your left shoulder and you've got your right shoulder, which can, well, you'll see as you progress through the script of different button combinations can do different things. It's exactly what they do in the games. That's what these game controllers were made for. So anyway, back to the button, because I feel like I've just started babbling there. So we've got if our D-pad is pressed up and the left shoulder button is equal to 0, which is off, so we're not pressing it in a YP state, then we're going to do an MC jog incremental start, our instance, the axis we're going to jog, which is a Y axis, and then we've got a jog increment. Now the jog increment, now this is where you need to decide where you're going to get that jog increment from. Whether you're going to pull it from a value that's in a DRO on your desktop. Mine, in my own personal Mac 4, I've got a DRO on my desktop which I can change the increments with the mouse wheel. You could also write another bit into your code to use up and down buttons on the Xbox controller. It's totally up to you. But for now, for that jog increment, just so we can use it, we'll stick a variable up the top as local jogging, and we'll set it. I'm working in metric. It's going to be 1mm for me. So that's what increment I'm going to do. This is just for this demo purpose, so we can get it running. So back down in the script, it's going to obviously increment the axis by 1. Now, when we release the button, when we use the get x in d-pad up is equals 0, blah blah blah, we're going to use a jog incremental stop on the y-axis. Now if you notice there, I've got a 0.1. Well, that's 1/10 of a millimetre to me. I could make it smaller if I want. Now the whole idea of that is you could put jog increment in there and it will stop to the nearest millimetre, but a 0.1 for me, if I press and hold the button, it will do a complete 1mm. If I release it before it's done the millimetre, it will stop that jogging. Now if for some reason you've got something in Mach 4 and you've put your increments on, let's say 5mm, and you start to do your z-axis down and you realise you've made a boob and you actually wanted to go up, then releasing it will stop that increment from ending. It will just stop it dead. It's good for, I love that because how can I say, I can actually jog across my machine at 10mm steps on some things, and if I accidentally do that on the Z, I want to let go of the button. Yeah, I'm dumb. Anyway, so that's what that does. Babbling again. So we could go in and try that if we put the rest of the code in. Now we've got a YP state here and we haven't declared that as already being false. So we need to go back at the top and put in our YP state. That's just for our y-axis, and then obviously well that's for the y plus. This button is purely y plus. Then you're going to have another one of these sequences for your y minus, your x minus and your x plus, and both for your z's. Let's come out of this and save everything we got. Oh my god, I didn't get an error. Well, I must have been babbling a long time. I've deactivated. Let's reactivate the controller. Enable the machine. Just zero these out. What we got? We've got the D-pad, so let's turn it running and do one jog up. So press button, goes up 1mm. The bit that I said about stopping early, if I just give it a tap, you see it didn't make it all the way to the end. So it cancels the incremental move as soon as you let go of it. And of course we've then stopped. If we look in here, then nope, we're not doing anything drastic. Another place you can look at is go to your login and enable that whilst you're using the controller, and jog forward. As you can see, we've started and we've stopped. There's no, if it was just an if and else statements without anything else, then you would see loads of jog increment starts, loads of jog incremental stops, just rolling down that page to there. When we disable it, go back into our screen. Now that's just the Y. What was that? That was the Y plus. Now for the whole of the D-pad, would look like this. Here we go. We've got our Y plus, Y minus, X plus, X minus, Z here. Now, where we've got the button obviously is not being pressed, so we can't get our Z mixed up with it. We swap it round to a 1, because obviously if the button's down there, then our D-pad up is going to become our Z plus. So what do you reckon? Do you reckon I can quit out of this screen without getting an error? Well, no, not unless I fill them in. So let's change them to all of that lot. That's our X plus X negative, Y plus Y negative, Z plus Z negative. Now, I've been asked before why I always go down and I try and declare everything as one-liners when I could actually do local XP state, comma, XN state, comma, YP state, comma, blah 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 equals false. Well, I do it like this for a simple reason. If I want to later at a time I'm doing something, I can come back and I can change that to true. Now if I'd have done that as a one-liner, I've got to take a bit out of it and make another line. I find it becomes messy when you're pulling bits out. So one-liners for me are good. Sounds like a comedian. So let's come out and see what happens. Do you reckon we've got an error? Oh, it gets boring when you ain't got an error. Got nothing to debug. Right, let's zero everything out. X360 stopped. Let's turn it on. Now this is just Y up, should be. Would be if I press a little green flashy thing down there. Right, turn that back on. D-pad 1 up. Yep, that's working. Backwards, down 1, and damn stupid X controller. X is working. So it's a little bit of the Z. It's too sensitive, this. This is why I like the thumbstick. You can actually put a dead zone in the middle where it doesn't work. But it's pretty good. Right, now let's press the left shoulder button, and it should now, the Y should now not work, and the Z is now working instead. Release the shoulder button, and it goes back to the Y. So that's the D-pad set up. Let's go back. Let's disable this, otherwise we won't get into the operator. Let's go back into our screen editor. And there we have. We have 3 timers running now. And D-pad. It looks a lot, don't worry. I will be posting this code, so if you want to do a bit of copy and pasting or just run the whole code, it's entirely up to you. So that's 33 minutes altogether roughly on how to set up the D-pad. So I don't think I'll be getting the thumbstick in this video, so it's gonna have to be a 2-parter. I gathered that from the beginning. So for now it's bye, and I'll see you in part 2. And we'll set up the thumbstick with velocity.